Thank you so much, Ms. Moderator. I have to say, and also thank you, Nicola, what you were talking about on the role of churches in divided society, communities, or the multi-track ecumenical peacemaking. I could just transform that to the role of religions in divisive communities when it comes to Cyprus, or the multi-track, instead of ecumenical, interreligious peacemaking, with exactly the same models or what's happening in Cyprus. So thank you. It just kind of leads on. 13 years ago, the only presentation you would have about Cyprus or from Cyprus was about the political conflict, about the military invasion of 1974. You would be hearing about its division, its occupation, its separation or declaration of independence only recognized by Turkey, its EU membership, where part of it is where one part would call it, it's part of it is military occupied, it's suspended, the part that is military occupied, as the Greeks call it, or a separate state, as the Turks call it. Numerous UN resolutions which are not respected or implemented. The oldest UN peacekeeping force in the world since 1964. A post-colonial independence which lasted only 3 years before intercommunal fights began. Sacred places desecrated, vandalized, used as stables, theaters, just left to perish. And a peace process that went on for long decades, which did not include all perspectives, the voices of the faith communities, the religious leaders of the country. So this would have been a presentation 13 years ago. Today, since 2004, especially when there was the only peace agreement that failed because one community voted overwhelmingly yes, while the other community voted overwhelmingly no. And hence, we've got a situation where, once again, back to the peace talks. The Church of Cyprus, the Greek Orthodox Church of Cyprus, and a majority of the members of the Holy Synod voted no to that agreement and also called on their faithful to vote no. I was working for the World Council of Churches, for the Commission of Churches on International Affairs then, and my General Secretary, Reverend Dr. Konrad Reiser, and the Executive Committee had asked me to look at that agreement and to see the role of the Church of Cyprus and to understand what happened, what was the role, why did they overwhelmingly vote no to a peace agreement which was hailed by the international community. In studying this very complex constitutional document and looking at and coming and visiting and talking to all parties, it was very surprising for us to understand, to talk to the UN good offices, that not all stakeholders were at the table. Not all stakeholders were consulted in the process. Not all communities were there, included women, who also did not trust the process and voted no, young people, but also the religious communities. And in Cyprus, the majority, the dominant religious community is the Greek Orthodox Church. They had not thought it was relevant to consult, to involve, or to work with the religious communities and leadership, because religion is something that's private. It does not affect. So anybody who knows the Cyprus history, anybody who studies a little bit of it and knows the role that the church has played over centuries, not only in the public life, which also includes the political life, would understand that that was a complete fallacy. The other, and I'm simplifying our analysis now, what we had presented to the World Council leadership then. The other one was that the whole question of the violations of freedom of religion, a fundamental human right, and religion being a victim of the political conflict, was also not seen that it is also an area that breaks trust to bring the communities together. So what was expected in their formula was that there'll be a peace agreement and then reconciliation will be the fruit of that, instead of recognizing that you have to build it from the bottom up, but by building bridges, by reconciling communities to reach a peace agreement, which definitely will be a compromise agreement. It will not be absolute justice for either side, so that they can move forward and see their role. So that was another fallacy that was kind of seen where it was. So taking those into account, we designed something called the religious track of the Cyprus Peace Process, which, with the help of friends in Sweden, the Church of Sweden, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Why Sweden? Because it's a country that does not have a colonial past in Cyprus, does not have any background. International law, human rights is at the center, and this work took international law, human rights as its basis, not the political. And for the first time, we noticed that in 2010, with the leadership of His Beatitude, Archbishop Chrysostomos, who was extremely willing to be at the table, we began a process where the Greek Orthodox Church of Cyprus recognized the Muslim religious leadership of Cyprus. They had never, ever even recognized, sat at the table, or talked to each other before, ever in the modern history of Cyprus. And that was mutual. In the process, they agreed to meet. They acknowledged each other. They agreed to have an agenda where they would focus and restore. They would focus on human rights. They would focus on restoring freedom of religion or belief in Cyprus, where they would not look at one as the victim, the other the aggressor, but together to be able to see where the issues were and how they could make a contribution. They agreed that they agreed that it is not acceptable for sacred spaces, places of worship, as well as cemeteries, of course others too, but they focused on those, can be vandalized and can continue to be in a state where they are, because they are something that hurt they become an obstacle to a conducive climate of peacemaking and trust building. Archbishop Chrysostomos and Mufti Atalay turned a new page together in the history of Cyprus. Our job as facilitators, everybody has been praising us, but really it was easy. They were courageous leaders that came together and were able to go beyond the usual narratives and take difficult, because they were not also appreciated in their own communities. They were called traitors for doing what they were doing. They invited the Armenian Orthodox, the Maronite Catholic, the Latin Catholic to join. They are the recognized religious communities in the Constitution of the Republic of Cyprus, and hence these. But we opened other tracks, as Nicola was talking about, the multi-track ecumenical. So in that sense, we also had others where the Anglicans, the Buddhists, the Sikhs, the others who are in Cyprus, other faith communities could also join, but not two different tracks. And so 10 years ago, they shaped what we call now the religious track of the Cyprus Peace Process, which is under the auspices of the Embassy of Sweden, assisted administratively by the Church of Sweden on our behalf in Sweden. Absolutely, they don't take any role in setting the agenda or affecting it. Extremely humble to allow the space to be the Cypriots to be able to develop their agenda and to see the steps forward. Very slow, patient, quiet, peace-building process. And in the last 11 years, I can say that their efforts have made unprecedented changes. We have been able to go to places of worship together that were closed either from 1964 or 1974, helping a healing process that has never taken place. Together, they were able to clean. I know it sounds so small for people who don't know Cyprus, but for us, after decades and decades of pain, to have a mufti or an imam and a Greek Orthodox and a Maronite and an Armenian Orthodox and a Latin Catholic to go together to clean a place of worship and then to be able to allow the community to pray has a huge healing process, which has never happened, and it's symbolic. They prevented further escalation of violence. For example, we had recently a graffiti on a mosque. We may sound nothing, but immediately it was used by President Erdogan, and a big story came out that there was a graffiti on a mosque. Because of the work of the religious leaders together, they were able to prevent that from escalating in Cyprus, and were able to solve it by speaking together, by advocating for each other. They are now, and no longer like in 2004, they are recognized as a member of an important member at the table by the UN good officers, by the Secretary General, by the Security Council, by the United Nations High Commission for Human Rights, by the special rapporteurs. So their voice is heard, but it's a voice that is coming together. And that is what is, they're realizing that's their strength, that this is not an interfaith dialogue. We don't discuss about theological issues. It's not about the Bible, the Quran. No, they are together working on a fundamental human rights and a transformation, a witness that is transforming the conflict, sowing the seeds of reconciliation, and very much together building bridges and breaking down the walls that have really separated us, which still exist. Thank you. I'll stop here.